Yeah.
And we believe what's next in advertising, if we've moved from marketing to everyone to marketing to anyone at the right price, the next phase of advertising is really about capturing that promise of marketing and really being able to find the right customer, your customer, with the right message at the right time. And we've started to frame our business around two key concepts: imagination and intelligence. And I stood up last week in Sydney and I shared this, and some cheeky bugger tweeted, "Imagination and intelligence, isn't that what we do already?" And it's one of those moments where you wish you could actually get them on stage and have the debate, because it's not. It's not what we do. It's not what we do today. We do some great imaginative campaigns with you. We do some imagination, but most of our campaigns are actually not imagination-led. They're outcome-led. And we don't bring a whole lot of intelligence to the party at all. We can't really tell you who you're marketing to. We can tell you in the aggregate that this particular channel may have 39% reach in your target segment. But for anyone who actually sees your ad, we hope that that fits within your target segment. And you go back to the classic Winnaker quote of, "I know 50% of my marketing is wasted, I just don't know which 50%. So this is not a world where we're bringing either really, I believe, imagination or intelligence to the table at the level we can.
This is Times Square, and I took this photo about a year ago. Beautiful evening, it's cold. I let the exposure run a little bit, got this great image. I expect a few of you have been there, and if you haven't, it's where you go for sensory overload. You cannot look anywhere without just being bombarded with imagery and messaging for one brand or another. It really is quite overwhelming. And of course, if you go online, it's much the same, isn't it? It's really, really difficult to not be just assaulted by so many different brand messages and advertising units. They say that an average person is now exposed to actually more than 3,000 marketing messages per day. That's a lot, and all of us have become incredibly good at filtering them out. I think if I get to the end of the day and if I can recall even 6, that's pretty impressive. All right, so if you're a brand or if you're an advertiser today, what do you do to stand out? What do you do to break through all that noise? It's pretty hard. I like to tell my clients that rather than adding to the noise, create a valuable experience.
What we need to stop doing is doing something I refer to as, we need to stop turning our audience into preference prostitutes. That they're selling their likes to advertisers for the sake of something free and degrading the quality of their connections and their impact and influence over others. This is that old graph which shows all the social media things that are out there. I'm just putting this up there to I guess raise the point that I'm going to be talking a bit about Facebook today, but of course what I'm talking about isn't unique to Facebook, it's not unique to Twitter, to Google+. This is just an example. It exists wherever you're using social media. I absolutely love this. You can find a whole bunch of these online. But this is people's Second Life avatar and a photo of the real them. You'll see that some people make avatars that look a lot like them and some people make avatars that look nothing like them. Which is great. I mean, that's Second Life though, right? Second Life is a fantasy space. And it really doesn't degrade the quality of the interactions if people do look entirely different. However, in social networks like Google+, like Facebook, it's really important to Facebook, to advertisers on Facebook, and in fact to friends and family, that people create, I guess, a simulacrum of themselves that is quite similar. Because if people start liking things they don't like, if people put information up there that's not actually about them, then it degrades their ability to target them and actually, hit them with the right message at the right time. And I guess the other thing that stays starting to show at the moment is that likes, Facebook or Google Plus pages now we can have, don't always equal sales. BBDO in the States recently did a study, sort of a 150-week study looking at brands and whether likes equated to sales. They found anything from just a 40% correlation between someone liking a brand and buying from them to a negative 5%. that just people were less likely to buy, on average, than people who didn't like the brand. So just because someone likes us doesn't necessarily mean that they, in fact, are going to be a customer of ours. I guess what I want to talk about today is it's not who likes you, it's how people use you to talk. And this should flip how we actually create content for consumers.
So, in a world where we know everything communicates, and a few years back, there was a speech by one of our senior managers on how the Coca-Cola company and its bottling partners are owners of a vast network of connections. Just to give you some numbers, every day, 1.7 billion of our drinks are served to consumers in 204 countries. We have more than 10 million coolers and refrigerators. We have more than 3 million vending machines. We have relationships with more than 20 million customers across the world. And we have our vehicle fleets that combined together is larger than FedEx and UPS combined. And if we add all the people who work on our business, we would possibly be the 4th largest employer in the world. So by any stretch of imagination, we are the owners of a vast network of connections. Now, what is very exciting and what's very interesting is if you add the consumer technology, broadly called smartphones and mobile phones, to this network, it suddenly opens up a whole slew of opportunities to genuinely bring this network to life. So when everyone has a smartphone or a mobile phone, our cans, our coolers, our carriers can deliver personal, richer, deeper experiences at millions of consumer touchpoints. Whether it's a can showing you a FIFA Cup clip of your favorite team, or it's a cooler that addresses you personally, or it's a vending machine that tweets you on your birthday offering you a free Coke, you can start thinking about the various ways we can leverage our network of owned connections to really deliver richer experiences.
Looking at a couple of other trends, social networking, which everybody has talked about and everybody has talked about appropriately. We think social networking, along with everyone else, is the real deal. The first thing we have seen that has caused people to log on to the web more than to check their email. 6 years ago, Rupert Murdoch buys MySpace for $580 million because he says it would allow him to reach the teenagers he can't reach through his newspapers anymore and are getting harder to reach through his television networks. About the same time as Murdoch buys MySpace, I'm in Sydney for the first, at least first for me, 9MSN Digital Summit in 2005, and I'm asked at a lunch before the summit by a bunch of reporters, what do you think about Murdoch buying MySpace? And I said that I thought it was a great investment. That part of the quote got lost forever. But that he would never be able to hang on to the teenage users of MySpace. And News Corp got really angry when I said that. And they fought back, not by saying you're wrong, but by saying, look how much money we've made. They were absolutely right. They paid $580 million, even though they sold it earlier this year to a group of investors, including Justin Timberlake, for $35 million. That was not a $550 million loss. Almost from the day they bought MySpace, they signed a $900 million ad share deal with Google, practically doubling their investment. They brilliantly marketed their Fox films and television shows on MySpace. They sold a lot of advertising. It was a great investment, particularly if you consider that 2.5 years ago, AOL bought Bebo, a second-level social networking site, for $850 million and sold it last year for $5 million. So MySpace was a great investment, but we were right. They weren't able to hang on to the teenage users of MySpace. It's not that we were so smart. We had seen the rise and fall of GeoCities, the rise and fall of a network some of you may remember, Friendster, And we knew 6 years ago when Murdoch bought MySpace, and this is what I said when I thought it wasn't going to survive, we knew that to a teenager, an online community is like a nightclub. And when the nightclub becomes too popular, or the uncool kids start showing up at the nightclub, you're out of there. And what's the cost of going from one club to another? Nil. And as a teenager, what's the worst thing that could happen to you in a nightclub? Not literally the worst. That would be somebody with a bomb or a gun coming in. But to most teenagers, what's the worst thing that could happen to you in a nightclub? Your mother walks in. Well, now your mother wants to friend you on Facebook. So last year, I was back at the 9MSN Summit, almost exactly a year ago, and I was asked, by the same reporters, they said, okay, you got it right on MySpace. What's going to happen on Facebook? Now, I can't stand here and tell you I'm right. I can tell you what I said, you can remember it, and we can all talk in a couple of years, but I said the same thing will happen to Facebook, with two exceptions. One, I think Facebook will grow for at least another 5 years, from 800 million users to close to 1 billion. If you go to Brazil, where 2 years ago Google's social networking site Orkut was practically a religion or a way of life, it's now disappearing quickly. So I think it will grow for at least 5 more years. Second, I don't think it will ever be replaced by another monolithic, huge community like that. I think it will be replaced by smaller, more specialized communities. I had nothing to do with Google+. Google+ I don't think has ever heard me talk, but I think we both realized having hundreds of friends was as much a burden as bragging rights, and I think Google+ was close to what some of that direction was going to be, but it's never going to get beyond 50, 60 million people, and Facebook has incorporated some of that into it anyway. But Facebook will actually survive forever. It's not going to die, just as MySpace hasn't died. What's going to happen to Facebook, they hate it when I say this, but I don't think it's so terrible. Facebook's going to be the place in 10 years where you communicate with your mother and father and aunts and uncles and relatives because they're on there already. Keep in mind that even though which community a teenager is in is a fad or a trend, and there is evidence, incidentally, since last year that in the US, Canada, and the UK, and I suspect here in New Zealand and Australia, but they haven't done the work here, there is evidence that in the US, the UK, and Canada, Facebook is losing a fair number of people on the site. But keep in mind, the heaviest users of social networks are people in their 60s and 70s. They're also the ones that derive the most value out of it. They're in Facebook, but they're also in communities where they learn how to be a better chess player, or to deal with the physical or emotional toll of cancer, or to talk about rugby or politics or whatever.